I want to stay for your public hearing, buddy. I want to listen. Thank you for offering. Yeah, thanks for doing this. And I've been singing your praises as being the only veteran in the Senate because I've been worn out.
She saved me a seat. That ain't saying much. I'm sorry. Everything's good. Like, good way to start. Jay, you drinking some beer with you this weekend? Oh, you did? Yeah, that's good. Yeah, he was nice enough. I couldn't make it this week. I'm gonna make sure I make those. We made it.
Thank goodness he's back. I've talked for since then.
Happy about that?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to County Municipal Government. It's about 4 minutes after. Clerk, if you would call a roll.
Senator Albritton.
Here.
Senator Carnley.
Here.
Senator Coleman. Senator Gudger. Senator Hatcher. Senator Hovey.
Here.
Senator Kelly. Here. Senator Coleman Madison. Senator Chambliss. Here. Senator Elliott.
I am here. We have a quorum. Thank you, Clerk. I appreciate it. First bill on the calendar is SB 174 by Senator Chambliss. There was a public hearing called for this. So, Senator Chambliss, if you'll introduce your bill, then we'll get started with the public hearing.
Yes, sir. This is a bill dealing with business licenses, and those of us in private business have to deal with this quite regularly. The gut of the meat of the bill is that it allows a business owner to appeal a ruling by a municipality or county to the Alabama Tax Tribunal instead of having to hire lawyers, go to court, file lawsuits, all that kind of stuff. So it's a taxpayer-friendly bill. That's the purpose of it. And obviously, it continues due process and that kind of thing. And there's some reporting requirements and that sort of thing. So I'm sure some of those in the public hearing will talk about some of that. We've worked with a number of folks. I think most of the issues are resolved, but obviously, there's still a little bit hanging.
Thanks, Senator Chambliss. Okay, we've got 3 folks signed up for a public hearing. Let's start with Jeremy Walker with the Alabama Realtors Association. Jeremy, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. On behalf of the Alabama Realtors, we speak in favor of the bill. The bill does 3 things that really would help our members who are predominantly small business owners. Number 1 is transparency. In some cities, it's very hard to find how much you're supposed to pay for a business license fee. So we'd like to see that put on a website. Number 2, appealability. There are instances where people make mistakes in good faith, but no one wants to sue their city or their county. And so to be able to go to the Alabama Tax Tribunal would be a great benefit. It's lower cost for the citizen and lower cost for the city as well. And then the third part would create a cause of action and some accountability for third-party collection firms that are out there and being a little too aggressive in going after fees that may not be owed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Brevity is the soul of wit. I appreciate that. Next up, Caleb Beck from the Alabama League of Municipalities. Caleb, an opponent to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee. My name is Caleb Beck. I'm the Legislative Counsel for the Alabama League of Municipalities, and I'm here to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 174 in its current form. First, before I get into my points of opposition, I would like to thank the sponsor for sitting down and working with us and addressing most of our concerns. However, there's one primary point of opposition that remains, and that's the escrow provision that comes into play if the reporting requirement is not timely filed. So the escrow provision is found on page 2 of the bill, at the bottom of the page, subsection C. And so what the escrow provision provides, it does not provide a grace period, it does not provide a notice of noncompliance, and it gives limited time for education and implementation. Another thing that we're concerned about is it could tie up municipal funds for inadvertently failing to timely file a report, which could delay potential projects, municipal services, and things of that nature. What the League would ask the committee to consider is to remove this escrow provision to give the League time to educate its members and to see if we can get the reporting requirements up without this provision. The training is especially important in election years because not only could there be turnover in administration, but there could be turnover in vital staff that fill out these reports. So that's where the education and training is very pertinent to keep our clerks up to speed, because clerks in small towns, they're asked to wear a lot of different hats, and this just adds another hat to their closet that they have to put on. And if they don't put it on in a timely manner, it could tie up municipal funds and inadvertently delay projects. So at the end of the day, all we ask is an opportunity to train and educate our members, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Caleb. Okay, next up we have Rosemary Elbash from NFIB. There are bonus points if you use the word bounty hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
and thank you, committee. NFIB strongly supports this legislation. As many of you know, I have reported constituents of yours that have called me about confusion about business license, business delivery license, what they owe. You will find that many small businesses operate in different municipalities, so they're required to get different business license. And in Alabama, we allow the cities to decide whether it's going to be a flat fee or gross receipts. So the reporting requirement would benefit small business owners because they could go to the website and see how the city is going to calculate their municipal business license. So this would be a big help in a big small business friendly bill. I will give you one instance. I had a call yesterday, as a matter of fact, from a business owner who operates in multiple jurisdictions, not brick and mortar, but they just go in the jurisdiction. She had a very tense conversation with the clerk because she was trying to find out what she owed in a business license. And she said, to be quite frank, I don't think I owe you anything because all I'm doing is delivering. And the clerk said to her, if you spend or operate 1 penny in my jurisdiction, you owe me a business license. So it was not a friendly conversation, but having it posted and somewhere you could see it would be very helpful. So I urge your support of this bill.
Thank you, Rosemary. We appreciate you. Senator, well, I guess a committee, if there are questions, Senator Hovey's got a question, looks like.
I do have a question. I've had a few conversations with some municipalities in my district and the league, and then the sponsor, and I appreciate, and they, to your credit, they did give you ample kudos for your willingness to hear them out leading up to this. I think the issue with education and implementation rollout is one at least worth exploring to make sure that there is enough time. But our conversation, if you wouldn't mind leading into sort of the defined rollout and when that first report would be due, and when the when that clause, the escrow account, would come into play.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And working with the league and others, I think we have worked through a lot of issues to get where we are. The timeline of this is the bill, if we passed it, in the next couple of weeks, whatever, is not effective until October 1st of this year. And then the reporting is not until March 30th of next year. So in my mind, that's ample time for notice and for education and people to, it's really not that complicated on the reporting anyway. It's really just schedules and that kind of stuff. So in my mind, that's long enough. We do know from at least two previous reporting requirements that I'm aware of that the vast majority of local governments report and do what they're supposed to do. But there are some that just are not going to do it. And unless you have some type of penalty in there, they're just not going to do it. I did come off of my colleague's nuclear option down to what I think is reasonable. Is actually, in my opinion, a little bit less than reasonable because, you know, if they don't report it, they get gigged. They can do the reporting in just a matter of probably hours and then release the funds. So in effect, it really may not be as much of a penalty as people would think it would be, because you don't lose a penny. So to me, it just calls attention to the bad actors, and you know, I for one don't want to really protect bad actors.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Let's let Senator Hovey.
No, and I appreciate that conversation, and I'll be quick. And I do agree. I would not want to see that removed at all. You know, I appreciate your willingness to outline sort of that layout. If it's okay, I'd like to move for favorable after Senator Kelly, but appreciate maybe some further conversations about, you know, a more defined or extended timeline if we come to that.
And I appreciate that. I have indicated that if someone can bring to me a better way to do it than this, I'm open mind, open ears to that.
But I agree. I think it does need to be included. Otherwise, there's no
Right.
necessarily incentive.
Right.
Thank you, Senator Hovey. Thank you, Senator Chambliss. Senator Kelly.
Yeah, I just want to applaud you, Senator Chambliss, for this. This is something I've experienced personally over the years, and it's been a problem for a long, long time, and well overdue. And I want to thank you for those that worked with you on this to create a very good solution, in my opinion. And I'd like to second Senator Hovey's motion.
Y'all are eager, and I love it. It's good small business stuff, but give me 1 second. I think we need to recognize Senator Carnley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment and I talked with the bill sponsor, and you know, we have several counties out there that don't actually have a business tax in the county. Now, the municipalities that are in the county do. And just for a point of clarity in this, what I wanted to do was to say, if they don't levy a tax, then they are not a part of this as far as having to go out there and file a zero report, because I know Department of Revenue sometimes will interpret that and say, well, you still got to go out there and file a report, which adds a burden. But if they don't have a tax, then this would exempt them from that from that reporting.
Everybody understand the amendment?
Yes, and I see that as friendly. It just clarifies it.
Okay. Senator Carnley moves the adoption of the amendment. Senator Chambliss seconds. Clerk, can we get a good roll?
Senator Albritton? Aye. Senator Carnley?
Aye.
Senator Coleman? Senator Gudger? Senator Hatcher? Aye. Senator Hovey? Aye. Senator Kelly? Senator Coleman Madison?
Aye.
Senator Chambliss?
Aye.
Senator Elliott?
Aye. Okay, the amendment's adopted, and we are on the bill. Any further questions on the bill? Senator Hovey.
Move for favorable report as amended.
Okay. I have a motion by Senator Hovey, a second by Senator Kelly. Any objection to using the previous roll? Bill receives favorable report. Thank you, Senator Chambliss.
Chairman, members.
Okay, Senator Carnley, we're going to carry over SB 180 at the sponsor's request, and that leads us to House Bill 196 from the incomparable Representative Margie Wilcox.
I'm not a bounty hunter, but I'll be sure to say her any
Extra
favor.
points. Rosemary smiling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. It's my honor to present HB 196. This really only involves Mobile County as we know it, our detention center, but we did have to write it as a statewide bill, and the County Commission Association put in a 90-day limit for us. So in Mobile, we had a judge maybe 50 years ago that handled the jail and being a judge. As y'all know, times have changed, and young troubled kids take a little bit more judging than they do. It's a difficult situation to be the judge and the jailer. So Mobile County Commission already pays those expenses. It'll be net for that. And then I'll stand down if y'all have any questions.
Senator Albritton.
At the appropriate time, I'd move for adoption.
I think it's appropriate, and I was second by Senator Chambliss. Members, I've looked at this. It was passed as a statewide bill eons ago. It has to be a statewide bill to amend it, and the county and everybody's fine with it in Mobile. So using previous role without objection.
Not a constitutional amendment or anything like that on it to change this.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
It's not a constitutional
No, ma'am.
amendment, nothing like that.
No, ma'am. Okay, any objection to using previous role? Bill receives favorable report. Thank you, Representative
Thank
Wilcox. Okay, let's see, Representative Oliver, you here? Ahead, there you are. This is House Bill 25 that we found.
Thank you, Chairman Elliott.
Thank you.
This bill creates a process for 911 collaboration. Alabama has remained a national leader in its provision of 911 services to citizens since the nation's first ever 911 call was placed right here in Alabama in Winston County. That was in 1968. The ever-changing technology necessary to maintain these 911 services can be very costly, and for some 911 centers, the most cost-effective and efficient way to deliver the services is to partner with a fellow center. While some 911 centers have expressed interest in partnering with other 911 centers, current Alabama law does not provide a process for doing so. This bill therefore proposes the establishment of a process for 911 centers to voluntarily coordinate operational services using the following guidelines. A 911 center may enter into a contract with another for a time frame not to exceed 3 years, allowing contracted services to be regularly assessed and renegotiated as necessary. Members of the public must be given the opportunity to present data, views, and arguments on any proposed contractual plan.
Representative Oliver, you're winning. I have a motion by Senator Hatcher. I have a second by Senator Chambliss. Are there any questions? Using previous role without objection. Please forgive me for interrupting you, Representative, but your bill receives a favorable report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Okay. Senator Hatcher, you got me there. I like it. That was good stuff. Next up is a much smaller bill than it was last time. Maybe we can stop with that. Smaller. Okay, so next up we have Senate Bill 193. This deals with the administrative services related to occupational licensing. And so you've seen the bill in your book. I would call it a binder, but book. In your, and you should have all gotten an email with a copy of the bill, also with a copy of a spreadsheet, not a spreadsheet, a chart, if you will. And it lists the boards that are included in this legislation and those that are excluded from legislation. So for the committee's benefit, I'll say this bill is substantially similar to what we passed out of this committee last year, in that it halved, I think, Senator Hovey, if I remember correctly, the original number of boards that was in the bill. The changes are that we've actually reduced it a little bit more from what was out there. And so this looks like a behemoth, and to committee members and also to the public, the meat of this is in the first 12 pages of the bill. It really is. After that, it is so duplicative, it will exhaust you. And so, Senator Albritton, did you have something that?
Yeah, I just want to make a general comment, if I may, if you don't mind.
Hop in. We're there. Go ahead. What you got?
Well, first off, I appreciate,
Karen Smith and LSA.
Yeah, and going down, I will tell you that we're creating another bureaucracy to watch over the bureaucracies, and I know all that. I've been through all this. I've seen this operate in other states, and it has not been pretty. So I'm concerned with that, but other than that, we got to get control of things in some way. So, well, I don't like it, and it's bitter, but I don't have a better solution yet.
Fair point. And so that's why we've started. Yes, ma'am.
I know this was last year, we've been over this, but could you just kind of give us a preamble of why and a little bit about your categories that you have here as far as these boards? I looked at this chart and I was figuring out what do they have in common, why this grouping, explain something.
Sure. So I'll walk through those, and was in the process of doing that. I thought the general fund chairman may have had something profound that he was going to, but.
I always have profound.
Okay, so here's the deal, and I'm going to flip through the bill itself. So I'm not reading off a talking point sheet or anything else, but flipping through the bill itself. This moves these boards, the administrative functions of these boards, under the Department of Workforce. I've worked with the governor's office on this piece of legislation. We have problems, and Senator Coleman Madison, you had asked why. And so I will simply say, y'all may remember last year I had a big old list of the data showing significant issues with Alabama boards and commissions. And this is a huge list, and I have it behind us here that y'all can all take and look at and everything else. To Senator Albritton's point, this is a mess. The sunset reports, all of which are right here that you can look at, are a mess. They are embarrassing. And they are embarrassing to the state, they're embarrassing to the licensees, and they're embarrassing to a lot of the board members. And so what we as a legislature, in my opinion and others, have done is we have set up these boards but provided them with no support. So we've provided them with no administrative support. We've said, congratulations, you're a board. I sure hope you know something about state government. I sure hope you know something about public notices. I sure hope you know something about administering a board, stars, procurement, and everything else. And what we've seen, and the reasoning for a lot of the boards that are here, is they don't, and they shouldn't, right? They're in this particular profession. They're not in the business of running a board. And so all too often these folks end up in a situation where they come before the Sunset Committee, and Representative Wilcox here, and they end up getting eviscerated by the Sunset Committee because they've got all these problems, but they're not really the board members' problems, right? It's a problem from an administrative standpoint. And so what we do is move this over to the administrative function. Yes, Senator Chambliss.
Mr. Chairman, before you move on, I think this is kind of the meat of it. Can you help me and us understand the difference between an administrative function and maybe a judicial or complaint type function? I think that might be part of it.
Yeah, so the bill maintains the boards as they are. All the rules and regulations and anything they've passed, the members, the setup, et cetera. This handles the back office functions, if you will, right? Okay, so it's going to handle the processing of the license, the noticing of the meetings, the taking of complaints, and yes, in some instances, the investigation of those complaints. But to my colleague's point about a bureaucracy, we already have it. It is this huge disjointed thing out there with people acting as agents of the state, but with very little control or oversight. And I think the sunset reports speak for themselves. Not a tremendous amount of efficacy.
And if I might add to that, not only that they're exercising judicial matters along this line also. I've got a few stories about those I won't tell today.
Sure. No, I understand. So page 2 is still in the synopsis. It says the bill would maintain the validity of occupational and professional licensing issued before the transfer and continuance of the rules of a transferred occupational and professional licensing board adopted before the transfer. All the rules stay. All the stuff stays. It's just the administrative part of it that is moving. That is reiterated on page 6. Again, the new entity would collect license fees, look at what those license fees are. You'll look at the fiscal note and you'll see 4.6 million in collections, which is way more than necessary to run the operation. And what you will likely see as you see reviews is a reduction in fees.
This one entity that you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am. That's just the boards that are included, okay?
Wait a minute. You said just the boards. Okay, just these ones that's in this category?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And so that's the goal, not to upset anybody's rulemaking authority, any of the professionals that have worked hard to do this, but rather to give them the opportunity to be successful and have the professional administrative services that they need so they don't have to come see Ms. Wilcox every couple of years and get, have to deal with the problems that are associated with how they are administered. To be clear, though, they're still included in sunset and still have to come back. I just think their time there is going to be a whole lot better. There's a public hearing. I'd like to go ahead and get started with that. I'm happy to, we've got time because everybody else was so efficient and Senator Carnley pulled his bill. So we've got time. So I'd like to go ahead and start the public hearing rather. We have 3 people signed up. A proponent is Ms. Christy Williams. Christy?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Most of you know who I am. I'm Christy Williams from Winston County, Alabama. And I was told I was only going to have 2 minutes, so I will keep it brief. All right, so like Senator Elliott said, this doesn't create new government. It enforces proper management of existing government. And I, for one, have been privy to the improper management. So to say that SB 193 is needed is an understatement. As a licensee who's been in the trenches under a board that was sunset and reconstituted due to mismanagement and blatant law violations by a private management company, I will say that SB 193 is a breath of fresh air. Keep in mind that even though we wrote executive orders, we fixed the contract, you guys fixed the way that contracts were sent in, there was legislative change, these issues didn't get fixed. They tried and tried and tried again to let them fix it on their own, and it wasn't getting fixed. Ultimately, we were sunset. These excessive contract amounts that come through the contract review, they make my fees higher. They open me up to fines. We had $103,000 worth of fines on a board that only brought in $200,000 with 2,000 licensees. That's a problem. The staff members of these private companies are most of the time not merit-based, and they're not held under ethics. There was an executive order to where the executive directors were going to be held under ethics, but that didn't help us. That did nothing for us. So contract review has been flooded with these high percent amounts. Just a couple weeks ago, there was a $96,000 one on $118,000 revenue. We have problems, and I urge this committee to give SB 193 a favorable report, and let's fix this so that I can stay in business.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Next up, this is APIB, I think. Okay. If you could give us your name, please.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Jim Castile, and I've been a board member for several years now with APIB. Now, our association, and you speak of the need for this kind of oversight, and I do appreciate that. There are boards that need that, but ours is not one of them. The only finding on our board was pertaining to paying our executive director at the beginning of the month rather than the end of the month, which is a process that started way before this executive director took over this board. And it's something that started when we were building a board from scratch at the expense of the executive director's office, because we don't take any funds from the state or the taxpayers. Now, when you say that you're not changing any of the rules, we've gone through a lot of legislation to bring our standards up to the standards of other states for reciprocity reasons. That helps the investigators and it helps the consumer. In doing so, though, we have a diversified board. It's ordered by law, racially, economically, genderly, and because of that, we're able to sit there and work with each other and look at these people in the areas where they're at and their situations and figure out what licensees are able to pay and what they're not able to pay. My company does well. I know what I can pay, but the little guy may not be able to pay that. For that reason, our agency license for me is 4 times what it would be for the little guy who only pays $25 a year for a license fee, so that part-timer doesn't get put out of business. And it is the inside of the board that we have, because of our diversity, that we're able to make these decisions for the licensees. That diversity was still in the language in the bill that you have, yet the setting of the fees and all that, that authority is taken away from them. So the diversity is nothing but a novelty. It has nothing to support the diversity and the equity in these decisions that affect these licensees out there.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, so a lot of the concerns that were brought up are contained in the bill. The board stays the same, the rules stay the same, all of that stays the same.
Question?
Yes, just 1 second if I may. The issue of fees, that is correct. Those fees are going to be set by the new director, what those fees are, and they may not exceed what is required to operate the board. And so you can see that potential for savings there. That's line 177 through 184. It also deals with some of these issues we've had about expenses. You'll see line 183 to 184 that says that the executive director shall allocate and disperse funds budgeted, novel idea, and allocated pursuant to the Budget Management Act and Article 4 of Chapter 4, Title 41. So there's lots of checks and balances in there that don't exist currently. Senator Coleman Madison, you had a question?
Okay, so you're saying that under the proposed 193, the board members would still, or the board would still be able to make their rules or make recommendations for the rules, still go through the same process that they have to do now, because some of it has to be approved?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And just so I'm crystal clear with you, that is line 156 through 161 on page 6.
Okay, setting of the fees. Now, so all of these boards pretty much set their own fees. Now, tell me why we're changing that, because you have people in the industry, and I understand putting it under workforce development, but you would have to duplicate all of these boards over at, and I'm trying to get to the good part of your bill. You'd have to duplicate.
Page 1.
You'd have to duplicate what all of these boards do over at the Department of Workforce Development, or have somebody that's knowledgeable about what's going on. So I am concerned about the sensitivity toward those persons in the industry. Is like, getting a shade tree mechanic to tell a dentist what to do. So, and I don't, I guess maybe that was a little bit harsh, but the issue is that the people that serve on these boards and agencies are people in the industry.
And they stay, and I value them, and I value their input, and I want them to be there, and there are no changes to those boards and their expertise and their industry expertise. Sorry for interrupting, but I just want to, I'm on the same page with you there.
Okay, give me a little walkthrough. Yeah, I'm 101. So how would it look? Say this is passed. Okay, just what is the day in the life of these boards, and what is the day in the life of the people over at Workforce Development as far as their administration of these particular agencies?
So the customer, our constituent, the licensee, is liable to see an efficiently run enterprise done by folks that are managing multiple of these boards under the state's umbrella, okay? They're going to have one single point of contact. And so when they apply for the license, they're going to get their license. When you have interactions with the board, that board is going to be managed pretty uniformly. What we have now is very disparate. And again, I point to Sunset Committee reports, and I don't want to beat anybody up, but I've got a consolidation of all of this. And
so they would apply through, I'll probably interrupt you because I'm trying to just
quite all right.
understand. So if someone coming in applying for a new license, they would apply to Workforce Development under their administration, and they approve it. Do they go through what's the process that they go through now?
I appreciate these questions. These are great. They apply to the board just like they did before. Okay. They go through the same process as they did before. It's the back office functions that are being handled by Workforce. And so what is forward facing?
Now give me back office, because I don't know, is that back room type stuff?
No, I'm trying.
So was the pitfall of what, because I'm seeking this clarity too.
Sure.
Senator Chambliss, you mentioned.
Can you hit your mic there just because?
You mentioned the distinction, forgive this interruption.
That's okay.
Because I'm searching for this level of understanding. You mentioned the distinction between two aspects here that we were looking at. If you can go back to that, because I think that speaks to that back room.
Yeah, I was trying to, in my mind, separate administrative,
Right.
meaning taking fees, issuing license, all the normal day-to-day stuff, versus someone who has a complaint filed against them.
That's the other.
And what the chairman indicated is maybe some of the investigative would still be in this agency, but the board that judges whether they did right or did wrong is still the same board that is doing it today.
That's correct.
That doesn't change.
So let's go to the bill. Let's go to the text. And I want to make sure I'm explaining it and then y'all are seeing.
You realize that we didn't read this, don't you?
It's just the 12, if you give me the first 12 pages, all I ask. Give me the first 12 pages.
Okay.
Starting with line 194 on page 7. The executive director, okay, and then it goes to provide administrative support, and on line 195, flip the page with me. Custodian of all records. These are duties of the executive director. Custodian of all board records. Process all license applications. Set administrative fees. I'm on page 8, line now 197. I'm going to go through this line by line.
Okay.
Custodian of all board records, process all license applications, set administrative fees as related to licenses, renewals, and examinations, schedule time and place for all hearings. Believe it or not, that's been a big problem. Issue licenses, conduct investigations on behalf of the board. Okay? Collect all fees and fines and other monies due the board, implement and enforce the rules that are set by the board, okay, the same old board. Let's see, the executive director is going to sign and attest any board orders, accept any legal processes necessary to be served upon the board. It standardizes the per diem rate, because that's all over the place, for a board member, and then reimburses them for travel expenses at the same rate. And so when y'all ask, Senator, when you ask what the back office duties are, they're on page 8.
Now,
That's the list.
can we have one of the opponent to come up and just trying to get us on the same page or whatever?
He did already.
I know, okay, Mr. Castillo, can he come up? And
sure.
I want to ask, because I don't know, you may be like me and hadn't read all this, because I took one look at this big thick, I'm like, he's got to be.
It's
Anyway,
half what it was last year. I'm trying.
well, you know, if you had just said, the meat of it is on the first 12 or 13 pages, I might have read it, but I mean, you know, I'm like, I have other things to do. All right,
What's your question?
Having listened to this explanation, do you think now of understanding what your role as a board member and what the board would do, that this would help you all in taking away some of that responsibility and making sure that you have somebody that is in that office that is going to be there on a full-time basis, that is going to be handled efficiently? Just give me your thoughts.
It's a tough question, because right now we have and I'm on national associations. I network with investigators throughout the country and throughout the world. We're very close-knit community in America anyway, and in most other parts of the world. So I'm very privileged to the ideas of what other boards are dealing with out there. And we have one of the most efficiently run boards in this country right now. There is no delay time. We get licensees licensed in a matter of days, not weeks or months. Georgia now, it can take 6 months to a year to get your license. They did this consolidation thing, and we have people coming over here trying to get licensed to use our reciprocity to work in their state.
Okay, hold on. Let me ask the chairman a question. Mr. Chairman, in making the decision of making up this list, because you know, two sides to everything, your side, my side, somewhere in the middle is the truth or compromise of trying to get to this point. So in looking at all of these boards and agencies, and this one in particular, since they are here before us, and did they have any of these issues that you previously mentioned that we, as a reason to put them in, because there are some that are exempt, as a reason to put them in this category?
Yeah, so fair question. And what I did, again, in concert with the governor's office, was go back through boards that had problems or have commonality with other management firms that have had problems in the administrative functions of their board. And so they've either had a problem themselves, or they've got management companies that have had problems before. And again, those are well documented by the Examiner of Public Accounts. I'm happy to go through board by board, and I'm happy, again, to go through the data showing significant findings for each one of them. Also, Senator, I go back to what I started with. I just feel like we did these folks a disservice by saying,
I can
off
see
you
your
go.
point.
Good luck.
I can see your point. You know, we set up something, and I tell people I don't like to play flagpole. And that's when they elect you, they run you up that flagpole, and they salute you, and they drop all the problems there and say, okay, you know, I believe in participatory government. I don't like to play flagpole. Don't run me up that flag and wave me out there by myself. But let me ask you a question, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think this would adversely affect, I'm seeing the benefits of Senator Elliott's bill here, that as a whole, and I understand you're saying, well, we don't have any problems right now, but do you think this would hamper what you're doing? You know, I look at it in a way, it may allow you to operate more efficiently because you don't have to worry about those other things. However, is there anything in this bill that says that, oh, there's a reporting to these agencies or whatever about what's going on with their particular agency as far as Department of Workforce Development? And the other question that I had last year, how do you deal, they all collect fees or license fees. So, and they all have these separate accounts or whatever. How is that going to be reconciled? Because I'm looking at, well, let's just use this board here before us. The Board of Private Investigators may be sued, and they may have several lawsuits against them. That's coming out of theirs. But now, if I've gone and got it all thrown into the same pot with the massage therapists or the Board of Electrical Contractors, how is that handled? How's the accounting handled, and how's that separated? Got a page for that?
Yeah, I do, actually. Before we get off of this specific example, because, Senator, I like examples. I mean, I'm like, show me how it affects this thing I'm talking about. And I wanted to double check our chart. So the Private Investigator Board starts on page 207, and you can read through what changes are to that specific board. And I think what you'll find is there's not a lot of changes to the board itself. It's just the function. So if you start on 207, it's a good example, and since the gentleman's here, to walk you through what changes there are and what there are not. Okay, now to your question, and I want to make sure I've got it.
About the money. This would just
About
be
the money.
all of them.
Yeah. So this money is put in a state account, so we don't run into some of the problems that this has been, that they've just gotten into trouble over. I don't know how to put it any other way. And so it collects them all and says, hey, you're a licensee, you're the same as this licensee. We're licensing people. We're not saying you do this thing and you're charged a higher rate, or you do this thing and you're charged a lower rate necessarily. And so this starts on line 177 and goes through line 184, okay? The office shall collect on behalf of each board all funds that is entitled to receive, and then it shall be deposited in the fund and shall be used to implement this chapter and perform required board functions. The executive director shall allocate and disperse funds budgeted and allocated pursuant to the Budget Management Act in Article 4, Section 4, or Chapter 4 of Title 41. So just to be clear, it puts the money together, and it says y'all are all boards. Most of these are simple licensing boards.
So if the contractors board gets a lot of lawsuits, but the Board of Interpreters and Transliterators really don't get any lawsuit, seems like somebody is paying for somebody else's.
Yeah,
Since it's all together, you're mixing all the money together.
I understand what you're saying, and first of all, you're the only one that's able to pronounce that board, interpreters and transliterators. You do it, you see? Okay, 2. Anyway, good job. So the short answer is, most of the lawsuits I've seen are about ministerial functions, right? They're about administrative functions, and I'm hoping we do away with a lot of that and a lot of those problems. But yes, the money goes in one pot. And the question is, why do we have these set up as separate little fiefdoms? I don't understand that. I don't.
Because they are separate.
Well, they are now, and I hear you, and it's a valid point, and it's certainly something to discuss. I think it gets us in trouble when you see, and I think Ms. Williams mentioned this, you see boards, raising fees. You see boards who see spikes, and again, we can point to this in the examiner reports, who see spikes in fines because they're trying to make up and find the money for their contract that they have with somebody else. And so I think, to answer your question on why it removes that incentive. It removes the incentive to fine and fee and increase licenses. There's not that incentive anymore.
You know, I thought you had an ulterior motive, but I mean, I begin to see your point, which is kind of dangerous. But I see that it would be, in many ways, a benefit to the board, that now you can serve as board, you can do your issuing of licensing, you still have to hear people that come before you and make a determination of whether they are guilty of whatever. They still do the responsible for issuing the fines, or how does that go? If there's
So the fines are still set by the executive or the board of the executive director, but they're, I mean, any of the judicial process,
okay.
as Senator
So
Chambliss
they still have
doing
that. They just don't have the busy work behind the scene.
Yep.
That really pulls you away from that. It would honestly take a professional in all of those areas. But the only question that I have still, you know, I don't know what kind of money Senator Hovey has. I don't want to have this rope-a-dope, somebody come up with you with a wad of money, well, let's mix our money together and come find out that what he has is a 20s, 50s, and 100s on the outside and newspaper on the inside. So my thing is, I'm sorry, I like to use examples and parables.
He's a banker,
here.
I love it.
But these agencies are different. And some of them are being sued more because, like I said, contractors get sued quite a bit. Not quite the same thing as the interpreter board or midwifery board. So if everybody, I don't know how you can tighten it up or make that whole, or how does that work out? Something needs to be said about that.
So I think some of that, Senator, happens naturally, and I've arrived at this conclusion while listening to your very good point, and it's this: the ones that may face more lawsuit or more costs are typically ones of greater size, and they are almost correlate with each other, right? Some of the smaller boards with fewer members, it would make sense, right? Face less costs because they have fewer members and less folks that, in your instance, may want to sue them. The bigger the board, the more likely there are members that might want to litigate, and so the revenues are skewed as well that correlate with the number of licensees.
Since we're talking about sunset, can we, I'm gonna probably bring an amendment to have a sunset on your bill at a certain particular time, because I do think we need an evaluation.
Yeah.
Now, if it's working and it's only fair, because the sunset people come before us and they're sunset, if they're working, they're doing their job, we continue them. So, it's time for us to play by our own rules. If this is working, as you say it's going to work, we continue. If they may need a little tweaking,
Well,
fine. But if it's not working, I don't want this to be put into law and then we don't have an option. I think that's a good compromise.
I would certainly consider that.
Okay.
Let's talk some. We've been talking a lot lately.
You've been doing good. You've been praying, right?
Mr. Chairman,
Most improved, yes.
Mr. Chairman, while y'all talking, I think you should change your vernacular. You were saying back office, and she said busy work. If you could say busy work instead of back office, I think y'all get along a lot better.
Busy work better? Okay, we're going to call it busy work from now on. Yeah, and I do have an amendment that I need to get on, and I'm cognizant of time, but if you have a question, yes, sir. Okay, well, I just was letting everybody know where I'm going. I don't want to cut you off, Senator, at all. Sure? Yeah, well, go ahead now. That's fine.
No, I think.
Don't let me forget the amendment.
Yeah, okay. So, we've gone through this a couple of times. And, I think where I'm always going to go back to is that person that is, seeking a license or a permit, because they're just out there doing their job and they don't necessarily understand all this stuff that's going on. But they're the ones that are going to be impacted by whatever we do, whichever way. So, my thing is so we consolidate these boards and we have one custodian that oversees all of these boards. I counted 19 that are here. And they have these 8 responsibilities. And making sure that these people that are seeking licenses are not adversely affected because, okay, now you're issuing licenses for these different boards and the time lapse between the time I apply until the time I'm approved, increases. I think that's one concern that I would have, and figure out how we can work through that. Either making it, hey, you got to do it in a reasonable time. I don't know how much it is today, but my big thing would just be in making sure that we don't, do this in the sake of consolidation and cost savings, but then, we put the people that are out there, blue collar workers or whoever they are, we put them in a bind because now they can't do their job because they're waiting on, this custodian who says, hey, I've got too much other stuff going on. I need another month before I can get to your license. So somehow I want to work with you in figuring out how we can, put that in here that person doesn't come back and just be like, well, hey, I've got too many boards and let me get through this.
So Senator, good question, and the Vice Chairman had a great point, and that is Senate Bill 29 actually says you got 45 days. And so, Senator, to your point, I agree, obviously, as a licensee in multiple states, that we want to make sure these folks are handled promptly. I've got a bill for that. I will also tell you that in looking through all of these sunset reports and these examiner reports and the compilation that, again, I'd encourage, I've got copies I'd like for everybody to look at, that's not the issue. Turning a license around isn't what's really snagging these folks. But no, I understand. And so I don't think they're having that issue now, and I don't think they're going to have that issue in the future. That busy work, is fairly easy to accomplish, I think. But I hear you, happy to walk through those, and if we need to change something up or put a requirement in here, 45 days sounds good to me, we can do that, or we can pass Senate Bill 29. Senator Hatcher, you had a question, didn't you?
Yes, thank you, because I think you raised a couple thoughts and questions that I was going through just looking at the bill. Let me just also saying, as one of those nerds who read the bills, I'm real concerned about getting this one and not having a chance to peruse it. I'm familiar with it because we worked with this even in the last session, and you are correct. You cut it down by almost a full half. The concern I'm going to have is, and you may have responded to this, so forgive me if I missed this. At what point did we have, and is it okay for Mr. Castillo if he wants to sit?
Sure.
He's still standing, and I don't have a question for him.
No, you're welcome to sit down, sir. Thank you very much.
If the people who are excluded on the list, will Senate Bill 193 have any effect on them?
No. And so another goal, and I guess Senator Coleman Madison had asked, what was you said, I'm going to ask about your ulterior motive. I think there's some ulterior motive. And so if there is an ulterior motive, and y'all know me, I play cards face up, it is to give these boards an option. Right now, they don't have an option. They don't have a state agency they can go to and say, I need help. And so they end up at the mercy of whatever's out there in the market, and it's laced with problems. And so to answer your question, if any of these excluded ones came to us and said, hey, I'd like to be over there, that seems to be running well, could they go? The answer is yes. Now, would we have to change their enabling legislation to do that? Yes. But at least they would have an option, and they would get to see how it's working.
So a part of what we're putting together with this legislation would be the oversight relative to all of these that are on this list, excluded and included, or only the included boards?
Only the included would be covered by this legislation.
And October 1st, 2026 is relevant to what?
The end of the fiscal year.
So that doesn't mean that if these individuals met the requirements of the legislation that they would then be on the excluded list?
No, the requirements of the legislation is that their administrative services are handled by this entity.
So they're, okay. So that's what permanent in that sense.
It's permanent until we change it, but we do that all the time. But yes.
Okay. That's what I needed to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And happy, again, members, I love talking about this stuff. I might be the only one that does, but if y'all want to talk about it, I'm happy to. I have an amendment. It's not a short amendment because it's not a short bill. One of the things some of our friends found out is that the liability language is different for everybody, right? And so what is, who's liable, who's not is all over the place. And all this does is sum up in board after board after board the liability exclusion. So you'll look on page 1 and it'll say the members, officers, executive director, employees, and representative of the board shall be immune from suit and liability, both personally and in their official capacity for any claim or damage, right? And then you go to page 2 and guess what? It says the same thing again, and the same thing again, and the same thing again. So it sinks.
Was it not in there before?
No, ma'am. When the code sections were brought over in the 262 pages in front of you, we did not sync up all of that different immunity language. And so what the amendment does is sync that up so that the immunity language is the same.
That's a good thing. Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you. So I have a motion by Senator Carnley on the amendment, a second by Senator Coleman Madison, using previous role on the amendment without objection. Okay, the amendment is adopted. Any further questions on the bill? Because I heard the bell ringing. Okay. I have a motion for favorable report by the chair. Do I have a second? A second by Senator Chambliss. Would y'all like to use the previous roll?
No, I'm going to withhold until I make sure we get a sunset amendment.
Okay. Clerk, could you please call the long roll?
Senator Albritton, Senator Carnley, Senator Coleman, Senator Gudger, Senator Hatcher, Senator Hovey, Senator Kelly, Senator Coleman Madison, Senator Chambliss, Senator Elliott.
Aye. Bill receives a favorable report. Thank you, members. Love to talk to anybody who wants to talk about it. We're adjourned. See you on the floor.
Scheduling conflict. I am now, if that's okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Alexander Willis with Alabama Daily News. Okay. It says Associated Press, that is a misprint. But, could I just